I remember a Tuesday night, sometime after work, standing in line for takeout without really thinking about it. Same place I'd been before, same kind of food. I tapped my card, glanced at the total, and felt that tiny pause in my chest. Not shock, just recognition. This would have bothered me a few years ago. Back then, this kind of dinner felt like a treat. Something you noticed. Now, it just felt normal. That's what stuck with me later. Not the price itself, but how little reaction I had to it. My job hadn't changed much. My paycheck hadn't doubled. But my definition of regular spending had quietly stretched. I didn't wake up one day deciding to spend more. I just adjusted, a little at a time, to the people around me. And because nothing felt reckless, I never stopped to ask when the line moved. Most of it happened socially. Drinks after work, group dinners, quick plans that started with, "It's not that expensive." I heard that phrase a lot. I said it too. And usually it was true on its own. 25 here, 40 there, split 4 ways. It barely registered. What I didn't notice was how often those moments showed up. 2 nights one week, 3 the next. I never planned for them. They just slipped in between bills and groceries like they belonged there. I told myself it was fine because everyone else seemed fine. No one looked stressed ordering another round or saying yes to dessert. And I didn't want to be the one who slowed things down over money. So I kept agreeing, kept swiping, telling myself these were memories. It wasn't until later that I realized memories still show up on your statement. Somewhere along the way, the places we ate changed, not intentionally. Nobody announced it. We just stopped going to the cheaper spots. Or maybe I stopped suggesting them. I honestly can't remember when that happened. What I do remember is sitting down at restaurants where a normal meal costs $25 before tax and tip, and thinking nothing of it. I used to glance at menus first. Now I just ordered. I told myself the difference between a $14 plate and a $26 one wasn't worth thinking about. And once or twice that was true. But when it became the baseline, the math shifted. Twice a week at that price instead of once at the old one, suddenly I was spending an extra $100 a month just to eat the same amount of food. My appetite didn't change. My surroundings did. And I adjusted without noticing. Delivery slid in even quieter. At first it was a convenience thing. Long days, tired nights. Someone would say, "Let's just order in." And it felt practical, normal. But delivery has a way of hiding its real price. $10 here in fees. Another $5 in tip. Menu prices that were already a few dollars higher than in-store. I didn't add it up at the time. I just knew the total was always a little more than I expected. When I finally looked back, I realized that ordering twice a week was costing me about $70 more a month than picking it up myself. That's over $800 a year. For food I would have eaten anyway. I wasn't paying for meals, I was paying to stay comfortable. And to not be the one who said, "I'll just grab mine." Splitting bills evenly felt like the polite thing to do. It still does. Even when I ordered less, even when I skipped drinks, it was easier to just nod and send my share. No awkward math, no moment of tension. But I noticed it later alone. $10 here, $15 there. Not enough to bring up, just enough to feel. Over a month, those little differences added up to maybe $60 or $70. Over a year, that's close to $1,000 I paid to keep things smooth. I didn't think of it that way at the time. I told myself it was fairness, but really it was avoidance. I didn't want to feel cheap. I didn't want to disrupt the flow. So I paid extra and called it nothing. Clothes changed too, not in a dramatic way. I didn't start buying designer stuff. I just replaced things sooner. Shirts that were still fine started to feel old. Shoes that worked felt off. Everyone around me seemed a little more put together, and I absorbed that. $100 jacket here, new sneakers there. I told myself it was about confidence, about looking professional, and maybe some of it was. But when I looked at my spending over a year, I realized I was dropping an extra $50 to $100 a month on clothes I didn't actually need yet. That's $1,200 a year for the feeling of not standing out in the wrong way. I didn't upgrade my life. I just raised the floor quietly. Subscriptions crept in through other people. Someone shared an app. Someone recommended a service. Everyone has it. That phrase again, $10 a month, $12, $15. None of them felt worth debating. I barely noticed the charges once they started. They just became part of the background. When I finally scrolled through my statements, I found 6 subscriptions I hadn't actively thought about in months. Together, they were costing me about $90 a month. Over a year, that's more than $1,000. I wasn't mad about it. That was the strange part. I was just tired. Tired of how easy it was to agree to things once and how hard it was to remember them later. Travel expectations shifted next. Trips became more frequent, more expensive. Flights at better times. Hotels a little nicer. You can't cheap out on this, someone would say. And I'd nod. I wanted to be there. I wanted to be part of it. So I'd put it on a card, telling myself I'd figure it out later. A long weekend that cost $1,200 instead of $6. Do that twice a year and suddenly there's another $1,200 gone. I framed it as experiences, and they were. But I noticed something uncomfortable when the trips ended. The photos faded, the balance didn't. And I never really asked myself if I wanted all of it, or just didn't want to miss out. Upgrades became automatic. Better seats, larger sizes, faster options. It's only a little more, I think, and it usually was. $5 here, $10 there, but those choices started stacking. When I looked back over a month, I realized upgrades alone were adding about $80 to my spending, almost $1,000 a year, for things that felt invisible once I had them. I didn't regret any single one. That's what made it tricky. It wasn't a bad decision, it was a pattern. And patterns don't ask for permission. Gifts changed too. Birthdays, weddings, group contributions. The numbers crept up without discussion. 50 became 75. 75 became 100. I didn't want to look like I cared too much about the money part, so I matched what felt expected. Over a year, between events and holidays, I was spending close to $2,000 on gifts. I told myself that was generosity, and some of it was, but some of it was fear. Fear of being seen as cheap, fear of standing out for the wrong reason. That part was harder to sit with. My apartment filled up slowly, a nicer chair, better lighting, a new rug. Each thing made sense on its own. Comfort, quality of life. I didn't go crazy, but over a year, I spent around $3,000 on home stuff I didn't plan for. And here's the part that bothered me later. I stopped noticing most of it after a few weeks. The comfort became normal. The cost stayed real. I wasn't unhappy with my space. I just realized I paid a lot for a feeling that faded quickly. We stopped talking about money altogether. Not directly. Conversations became about vibes, about how something felt worth it, about convenience. Nobody said numbers. That silence made it easy to assume everyone else was fine, doing better than me even. I didn't ask questions I probably should have. It felt invasive, so I guessed. And my guesses pushed my spending higher than my reality supported. I didn't feel reckless, I just felt slightly behind, and I kept trying to close a gap I never actually saw. Credit cards smoothed everything out. That was the selling point. The balance became background noise, a low hum of stress I learned to live with. I told myself it was debt. Not really. I'd pay it off soon. But the balance didn't come from emergencies. It came from alignment, from keeping up with the room. A few hundred carried over, then a few more. Before I knew it, I was paying about $200 a month just in interest and minimums. That's $2,400 a year for the privilege of not feeling out of sync. Social media didn't help, even though I knew better, even though I knew it was curated. Seeing trips, dinners, upgrades, it all made my own spending feel normal, even conservative. I'd scroll and think, at least I'm not doing that. But comparison works quietly. It raises your tolerance without asking. I wasn't trying to copy anyone. I just stopped questioning whether my choices were actually mine. This is the part I didn't want to look at first. One night, I added it all up. Not perfectly, just roughly. The extra on food, the delivery fees, the upgrades, the interest. It came out to about $600 a month. I couldn't really explain. That's over $7,000 a year. I didn't panic. I just stared at the number. It felt heavy in a quiet way. Like realizing you've been carrying something for a long time without noticing the weight. I noticed how often I said, "This is just how things are now," as if the world decided for me, as if there was no point questioning it. That phrase made everything feel inevitable. It protected me from asking harder questions. If it's just how things are, then there's nothing to examine. I didn't love that realization. It felt a little embarrassing, but it also felt honest. What bothered me most wasn't the money. It was how far my spending drifted from my actual values. I still cared about security, about flexibility, about not feeling stressed all the time. But those priorities got crowded out by convenience and social ease. I didn't lose them, I just stopped checking in with them. And they didn't disappear quietly. They showed up later as tension. I started noticing it in other people too. Small comments, jokes about being broke. The way conversations shifted when money came up, everyone seemed fine and tired. Like we were all carrying similar weight and pretending not to feel it. That made it harder and easier at the same time. Harder because it felt normal. Easier because I knew I wasn't alone. None of this felt like failure or irresponsibility. That's important. It felt like drift. No single decision caused it. No moment where I went off the rails. Just a long series of small agreements. Small adjustments, small silences. When I thought about it that way, I didn't feel ashamed. I felt unsettled. Awareness came late, but it came honestly. Now, sometimes I sit alone and look at my monthly total. I don't judge it, I just notice it. The number tells a story about where I've been standing, who I've been around, what felt normal. The money didn't disappear. It followed the room I was in. And every once in a while, I catch myself wondering what would change if I paid more attention to that room.